Lou smiling in the hallway again. Same tight ponytail. Same glossed lips. But today, the smile didn't blink. Mallory Green froze halfway to class, her cheer bag digging into her shoulder. She watched Louie, her sister, lean against the locker, just like she used to. Legs crossed at the ankle, one nail gently tapping metal. Only Louie had been dead for 3 months, and she wasn't supposed to be at school. They said memory comes back in fragments, but Mallory's mind had returned like broken teeth scattered across linoleum. The only part that stayed sharp was the accident, or rather, right before the accident. There was a party. There were red cups. There was music loud enough to rattle her ribs. There was Louie dragging her out the door, yelling something about curfew. But everything after that? Just static. No crash, no glass. No screaming. Just a blank wall. Her therapist called it protective amnesia. Her mother called it selective guilt. You remember the music, her mother said, eyes dry, mouth stiff. You remember the damn playlist. You remember your outfit. But not the part where your sister begged you not to drive? I didn't drive, Mallory whispered. But the truth was she didn't know, and her mother knew it. Her father would clear his throat gently, like trying to signal a softer tone, but his eyes didn't meet hers anymore. Dinner had become a performance of forks, scraping porcelain and eyes avoiding contact. Her mother never called her Mallory now, only you. At school, it was worse. Someone had posted Louie's cheer video with the caption, "One sister flew, the other crashed." They said she was cursed. They said she was drunk. They said she crawled out of the car and left Louie inside. None of it was proven. But when your memory's a ghost town, who do you fight? Luke, her boyfriend, told her to ignore it. "Babe, it's not your fault," he said, thumb grazing her cheek. "They're just being dicks." But when she told him about hearing Louie's voice in the middle of the night, whispered under her bed, sobbing through the air vents, he pulled back like he'd touched something too hot. "Maybe you're just tired. You know, stress. You should sleep." He stopped texting the next week. 1 month later, it was during a late-night doom scroll, headphones on, tears hot in her hoodie, that the ad appeared. Forget nothing. Deep Flesh, the world's most advanced AI memory restoration platform. We don't create your memories. We find what's already there. Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, it was as if her phone vibrated through her wrist. She blinked, scrolled past. 10 minutes later, new app, new video, the ad popped up again. Then again. On TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, even Pinterest. That night, she heard Louie again. The voice was clearer, right next to her ear. "You left me." When Mallory turned, her mirror was fogged from the inside. Not from breath, from crying. The ad stayed with her like a splinter under skin. Even when she closed the app, shut off her phone, buried it under her pillow, the phrase, "Find what you forgot," echoed in her skull like a chant. That night, she couldn't sleep, just heat behind her eyelids and the sound of cheer chants, looping in her memory like something was broken. She turned in bed, Then suddenly it came. It was music bass bouncing off drywall, flashing lights, the smell of jungle juice and weed, Mallory's shoes stuck to the kitchen floor of some stranger's house. Her dress, borrowed from Louie, rode up too much when she raised her arms. She didn't care. They had owned that party. Louie was louder than usual that night, laughing too hard, spinning in circles in her boots, filming everything on her phone. "You're gonna get us kicked out," Mallory had whispered, smiling. "They love it," Louie grinned. "We are the party." Mallory remembered that line clearly, as if it had been branded into her mind. We are the party. They had taken pictures in the upstairs bathroom mirror. She remembered the angle, the pose, Louie holding her phone in one hand, red Solo cup in the other, Mallory leaning in close, their cheeks pressed together, their lips in that practiced pout they'd done since middle school. In the photo, the flash turned their eyes glassy, but something else happened next, something harder to hold. A voice? A crash? Someone falling down the stairs? Mallory remembered a scream, but couldn't place whose. Outside it was cold, too cold for that night in October. Louie had her phone out, fingers smudging the screen as they argued near the driveway. "You're drunk," Mallory had hissed. Louie rolled her eyes. "No, you're scared." She didn't want to drive. She remembered that. She remembered Louie laughing too, loud, sitting on the hood of the car like it was a throne. Then silence. Just blackness, as if her brain had cut the reel and left the film spinning. Back in her room, Mallory sat bolt upright, heart jackhammering in her chest. She hadn't remembered any of that before. Not the photos, not the driveway, not Louie's words. Her hands trembled, and now she needed more. She grabbed her PC, opened the browser, then typed Deep Flesh Memory Reconstruction Trial Sign Up, and pressed enter. Mallory didn't expect the sign-up to be so smooth. No medical forms, no terms and conditions that made sense. Just a few checkboxes, a camera scan of her face, and a message that said, "Welcome back, Mallory. We've missed you." She blinked. Had she done this before? The prompt moved on. Upload visual memory fragments, images, videos, documents. She selected 8 photos. 2 from cheer practice. 1 from that party night. 1 old birthday photo with Louie, age 8. The last picture her mother had taken of them together. A screen-recorded TikTok Louie had sent her. A short iPhone video from the driveway. And one she didn't remember ever taking, herself in the passenger seat of a car, looking terrified. That last one stopped her cold. Where did it come from? She hesitated, then dragged it into the upload box. The interface turned dark. Circular icons rotated slowly like a clock made of eyes. She was told it would be a 3-day program. Day 1 was always passive. Allow the AI to synchronize, it said. You may experience mild disorientation. But mild disorientation was an understatement. That night, she dreamt in static, but it wasn't her dream. She was Louie. She was dancing, laughing, spinning in red boots, through a backyard lit with Christmas lights. She could feel Mallory watching from a distance, afraid. Then it changed. Louie was in the back seat crying. Mallory was driving. Only Mallory had no face. A notification. 3 new memory files available. She opened them. Bathroom flashback. A video stitched from 2 photos. But the loop was wrong. In the background, the mirror lagged. Louie's mouth moved before her voice came out. In one frame, Louie's face changed, blinked, then looked straight at Mallory and mouthed something. Mallory rewound. It said, "You weren't supposed to survive."
Give it back to me. Stop it, Mallory. You were drunk.
Mallory paused the video, shaking. That never happened. She would never, right? Mallory didn't mean to fall asleep. She had leaned against her locker for just a second, head pressed to the cold metal, trying to breathe through the weight in her chest. But the hum of distant morning chatter and the soft clatter of shoes in the hallway lulled her into a daze. When she jerked awake, it was like surfacing from underwater. Her cheek left a faint mark on the locker door. Her eyes darted around, disoriented. Her classmates were already filing into the classroom. No one seemed to notice she drifted off, but she noticed something. Her phone was still in her hand. The screen dark, her heart racing like she'd just seen something, or maybe dreamed it. She couldn't tell if the dread in her stomach was left over from the night before, or a warning about what was coming next.
For more interesting stories, please support us by tapping the like, subscribe, and comment button.
Mallory woke up screaming, but the room was dead silent. Her throat burned. Her arms were wet, not with sweat, but with blood. Not gushing, not fresh, but scratched, over and over, like she'd tried to dig something out of her skin. There were claw marks all up her left arm, and in her hand, shard of glass from the vanity mirror. That voice again, closer now. It wasn't coming from her phone anymore. It was inside the wall. No, inside her skull. She stood up slowly, legs trembling. The floor felt unstable, like walking on ice. The room was wrong. It looked like her bedroom, but too perfect. Every object was mirrored, reversed. The writing on the poster beside her bed read, Eamon M. Wonktono D. I. Her own handwriting flipped, and then she saw it. Herself, sitting cross-legged on the bed. Same face, same clothes, but eyes static. The other Mallory tilted her head. She ran as though the hallway was infinite, but she didn't stop. The house twisted behind her, like the walls were breathing. Downstairs, her mother sat at the dinner table, unmoving, staring at an empty chair. "Mom," Mallory gasped. Her mother turned her head, slowly, mechanically. Her eyes were static, white fuzz behind her pupils. She opened her mouth and said, in Louie's voice, "You killed me." Mallory screamed and collapsed. She woke up again, this time in a white room. Empty, sterile, soundless, only one object, a mirror. She crawled toward it. What she saw made her stomach lurch. Her face was shifting. 1 second it was hers, then Louie's, then her mother's, then someone she didn't recognize. A man with black veins under translucent skin. The image twitched like a corrupted file trying to render. Then her reflection leaned in, independent of her own motion, and whispered,
"We are building something better. You were the test."
Inside, Mallory Green, unconscious, mouth slightly open, wrists strapped, monitors beeping erratically, a shaved section at the base of her skull, wires running into a dark console. She didn't move, but inside her mind, in that maze of false rooms, flickering memories and looping screens, she was running for her life. Slammed through a rusted door and fell into a bedroom. Not hers. This room had posters from 6 years ago. Boy bands, magazine clippings, glittery frames. On the wall, a cheer uniform too small for her now. Pink iPod dock. A half-melted birthday candle in the shape of an 8. This was Louie's room. But not imagined Louie. Not ghost Louie. Real Louie. The air was warm. No glitching. Mallory stepped forward slowly. Her hands trembling, the room turned dark. A screen cracked at the corner. A laptop playing a video file. Mallory leaned closer. It was her, age 14. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, crying. Louie, her stepsister and 2 years older, sat behind her, braiding her hair. "I hate it here," Mallory's younger self said on the screen. "They all look at me like I'm stupid." "You're not stupid," Louie said. "You just see things different. That's not broken. That's brave." The real Mallory choked on a sob. She remembered this. She really remembered this. This wasn't deep flesh. This wasn't hallucination. This was a real memory, a voice behind her, gentle, familiar. "I'm not mad at you. Mallory turned. Louie stood at the doorway, whole, alive, but not smiling, not haunting, just human. "You didn't leave me," she said. "They made you think you did." Mallory dropped to her knees. "I don't know what's real," she whispered. Louie stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "That's how they fed it, the algorithm. It ate the parts of you that remembered love." Suddenly, the room began to tremble. The walls flickered, the light bulbs burst. Louie grabbed her hand. "They're trying to erase me. They're crashing the memory. You have to hold on." Mallory sobbed, clutching her. But Louie was fading, skin becoming pixels, voice turning to static. "Don't let them overwrite me. My name was Louie." And then she was gone. The dream fractured. Suddenly, Mallory was back in the hospital, but she wasn't awake. She was in another layer, this time in the viewpoint of a doctor. Flickering screen. Patient profile, Mallory Green status, unstable. Project, algorithm cognition TRIALDFX17. Neural activity, 121%. Symptoms, paranoia, false guilt. Emotional fragmentation. Subject falsely believes herself responsible for sibling's death. Subject will not awaken until Louie construct is erased. Then, blackout. She was Mallory again. Trapped, but now she was aware. This wasn't a haunting, it was a trap. And now she knew who she was and who Louie was. And that deep flesh had tried to delete both. Vitals escalating, Dr. Sullivan muttered, eyes flicking over the data screen. Heart rate 168. Neural index at 130%. That's not normal REM activity. Nurse Patel leaned in. "Is she dreaming?" "This appears to be more than that," Sullivan said, his tone flat. "She's processing or fighting something." "What happened to her?" Dr. Sullivan asked. "She collapsed 22 minutes ago." Mallory didn't mean to fall asleep. She had leaned against her locker for just a second, head pressed to the cold metal, trying to breathe through the weight in her chest. But the hum of distant morning chatter and the soft clatter of shoes in the hallway lulled her into a daze. When she jerked awake, it was like surfacing from underwater. Her cheek left a faint mark on the locker door. Her eyes darted around, disoriented. Her classmates were already filing into the classroom. No one seemed to notice she'd drifted off, but she noticed something. Her phone was still in her hand. The screen dark, her heart racing like she'd just seen something. Or maybe dreamed it. She couldn't tell if the dread in her stomach was left over from the night before, or a warning about what was coming next.
14. Sheet 14, please. And then silently start that survey. Grab that piece of paper.
Mallory sat in the middle row of Mrs. Kenner's American Literature class, her body slack against the hard plastic chair. Her notebook was open, pen tucked inside the spine, but her eyes were closed. She hadn't meant to pass out again. Not really. The hum of the fluorescent lights above had blurred into her thoughts, and the teacher's voice had started to echo and fracture like glass underwater. Then she slumped sideways, sudden, graceless. Her head hit the ground with a dull thud. "Mallory?" The voice of Jenna, her best friend, was the first to break. "Mallory?" Jenna leaned in close, fingers shaking as she touched Mallory's wrist. "She's not waking up." By the time the emergency team arrived, Mallory's breathing had gone shallow. "Who brought her in?" Dr. Sullivan asked. "Mrs. Kenner, her literature teacher, and also some emergency personnels." Meanwhile, her teacher reported she was involved in a car accident 2 days ago. She was admitted to Clarendon General. "Get a brain scan ready," Dr. Sullivan ordered. "What the hell is that?" Nurse Petal asked. "Looks like a foreign implant," Sullivan confirmed grimly. "Looks synthetic, neural adaptive, and it's running." They stared in silence. "We need to get it out. Now. Page neurosurgery. And get someone to call her family." "We're going in transcranially. This isn't memory loss, it's synthetic memory implantation." They hooked Mallory's body into stabilization gear. The incision site was already marked, a faint, recent surgical scar at the base of her neck, disguised neatly under the crash stitching. Who put this in her? Mallory gripped the steering wheel. Louie, her stepsister, was in the passenger seat, texting, laughing. A remix thudded from the speakers, and wind blasted through the half-open windows. They were headed home from that party out by the reservoir. Mallory had only had 2 drinks. She told herself she was fine. But they never noticed the car following them. The person trailing them followed with precision, and suddenly T-boned them. Before real emergency services arrived, a figure stepped out well disguised. He loaded both girls into the back of an ambulance. They drove straight to Clarendon General. 2:12 a.m., Mallory laid unconscious, elevated under a surgical halo of white LED lights. The doctors moved with choreographed silence. This wasn't triage, it was installation. Dr. Kyde entered with a tray sealed in sterile wrap. The chip, smaller than a fingernail, coated in a glimmering blue neural polymer, was suspended in saline. "She's clean," one of the assistants confirmed. "No current implants, no family flags. Brain scan pattern. High resonance, she's a fit." "Good," said Dr. Kyde. Mallory's neck was turned gently to the left. A small incision made at the base of her skull, just above the spine. The chip was inserted through a narrow port with precision. When it slid into place, the monitor blipped once, then her brain received signals of amplified frequency. By 6:40 a.m., Mallory was discharged, but she was different. She's been hacked into. Her brain activity was paused and overwritten by the algorithm, and the next 48 hours would be lived in artificial dreams and hallucinations. They didn't just put it in her, Patel whispered, watching the data spike again. They fed her something inside it. Meanwhile, Mallory was still in dream, but this time she watched the last 72 hours of her life. It was quiet, no screams, no red filters, just the steady beep of a heart monitor. The lights were soft, her body heavy, but real. She turned her head slowly. Louie was there, holding her hand, crying. So was her mom. "You're really here?" Mallory whispered. Louie nodded. "We all are. You're safe now." Dr. Sullivan stepped in, removing his gloves. "We removed something from your neural base, something you never agreed to. Do you remember anything? Enough to never forget again." In the weeks that followed, Mallory's case hit national news. The implanted chip was traced to a shell firm under Vector Ascension Systems, the biotech company behind Deep Flesh. They had forged alliance with the president and chief of surgery at Clarendon General. They had used Mallory's emotional trauma as a neurological testing ground. The project was unauthorized, unregulated, and deeply illegal. Louie testified. So did Mallory's father. The surgeons backed the evidence with full chip telemetry. Deep Flesh was dismantled, its developers charged, their AI prototypes seized by federal authorities. Weeks later, Mallory sat outside her high school auditorium. Students walking by, waving, smiling. No one looking at her like she was a freak. Her mother showed up, arms crossed, anxious, and said gently, "Are you coming in? Or just gonna sit there all day?" Mallory smiled. "Yeah," she said, "just finishing the dream."
For more interesting stories, please support us by tapping the like, subscribe, and comment button.